Good evening, everyone. I'm Lindsay Shannon, and I'd like to welcome you all. Before we get started, we're really pleased to be playing for you a short video presenting all of our winners from this season.
Congratulations to all our award winners. And thank you to everyone who took the time to nominate all the worthy candidates. And now I'd like to welcome you to Curl BC's annual general meeting. My name is Neil Campbell, and I'm the chair of the Board of Governors. I will be chairing this meeting. I will now call the meeting to order. I'd like to begin by acknowledging that while you're all joining us from communities and regions across the province, we are hosting this virtual meeting on the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territory of the Hunkaminam and Squamish-speaking peoples. Curl BC is honored to ground our work in these territories as we strive to increase access to curling for all British Columbians. I would like to ask Lindsay Shannon if she could please confirm we have a quorum and the number of member facilities present.
We
Quorum
have,
is a minimum of 20% of Curl BC's 84 members facilities, which is 17. Lindsay?
sorry, Neil, we have 24 voting members present, so we will require 13 votes in favor.
Thank you. That's 24 voting members present, and for motion to pass, it require 13 votes in favor. At this point, I'd like to just give you an overview of proceedings, which is number 3 on your agenda. This year, the governor at large elections, we are in a transition year from 2-year terms to 3-year terms. This process is addressed by a temporary bylaw, which was approved as part of the bylaw changes made at the 2021 annual general meeting. In summary, 3 candidates will be elected for 3-year terms. 3 candidates be elected for 1-year terms, and 3 current governors in the middle of a 2-year term will have their term extended by 1 year, so they will have another 2 years on the board. We will come to the voting later on in the AGM, but voting member delegates, please use the chat feature for voting, only if opposed. Always start with your club name. Everyone is welcome to use the Q&A opinion for any inquiries. I will now ask for an approval of the agenda and ask if there are any amendments to the agenda.
Nothing has come through, Neil.
Seeing no amendments, the motion to approve the agenda was moved by the Vancouver Curling Club, Colin Chan, and seconded by Campbell River Curling Club, Cynthia Liu. And I now call, and I now ask for any questions. Seeing none, I call for the vote. Remember, use the chat box only if you are opposed.
Nothing has come through.
The motion to approve the agenda has been approved. The next item is approval of the minutes. Please review the minutes from the last annual general meeting held on June 12, 2021. Again, use the chat box to inform us any clarifications or additions to the minutes.
Nothing has come through, Neil.
Thank you. The motion to approve the minutes for the June 12, 2021 annual general meeting was moved by Vancouver Curling Club, Colin Chan, and seconded by Campbell River Curling Club, Cynthia Liu. Are there any questions or discussions?
Nothing has come through.
Hearing none, I now call for the vote. Again, use the chat box only if you're opposed.
Colin Chan is asking about an abstention. If you're abstaining, you can write that in the chat. Nothing else has come through.
Accordingly, I declare the motion has been approved. The motion to approve the minutes has been approved. The next item is number 6, introduction of the board and chair's remarks. Again, a reminder that I'm the chair of the board of governors of Curl BC. The other members of the board are Keith Switzer, vice chair, Terry Hawes, vice chair, Terry Pelinchuk, past chair, Andrew Benson, Sean Everest, Dale Gregory, Morgan Lipka, Brendan McClellan, and Terry Phillips. A big thank you to these governors for all their voluntary contributions to curling in BC this past year. At this time, I would also especially like to welcome any life and honor life members who have joined the meeting. Curl BC is a complex provincial sport organization, and to achieve its goals depends on a network of volunteers. On behalf of the Curl BC Board of Governors, I'd like to recognize all the club volunteers, event hosts, committee members, consultants, and facilitators, and of course the ice technicians and officials. You make it all work. We thank you. We are all aware that 2021-22 was another challenging season with all its disappointments and frustrations. Change seemed to be a weekly, if not daily, irritant. Despite the many challenges, throughout it all, the Curl BC staff have been sterling and steadfast. As chair, and on behalf of all of us, I'd like to commend the Curl BC staff for their ongoing commitment on behalf of curling in British Columbia and Canada. At this point, I'd like to give a very warm welcome to Brian Cowan, who sits on the board of Curling Canada and is here to bring some greetings from the national organization.
Thanks very much. I'd like to bring a warm welcome on behalf of Curling Canada and our chair, Amy Nixon, and our CEO, Catherine Henderson. So pleased to be here tonight to join you in this event itself. Curling Canada works closely with Curl BC and together with other member associations across Canada, collaborate in all areas of the sport that we have so much passion for. Collectively, we have so much to be grateful for, and we achieve so much together when we actually work together. And working with you, with the member associations, we have a lot to be thankful for, and especially at the local level for all that you do to make this sport absolutely wonderful and deliver what it needs to all the curling participants, whether you're a grassroots curler or whether you're a competitive curler. Our aim is ultimately to grow the sport, to attract, retain, and motivate curlers of all ages, all demographics. And more importantly, these days, we're spending a lot of time as we look at diversity, equity, and inclusion to ensure we attract those Canadians that represent the mosaic of Canada. So once again, thank you very much for allowing me to join you at your meeting tonight, and all the best in your curling seasons ahead, and have a great summer. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. I'd like to call upon Scott Braley, the Chief Executive Officer of Curl BC, to present the 2021-22 financial statements. Scott?
Thanks very much, Neil, and thanks to Brian for joining us. I know this is everybody's favorite part, and so I won't keep it too long, but what I'm going to be referring to is this green book, which we sent out, which is the financial report. We always make it green. And the three things we'll cover are the 2021 results, the audit report, and then we're going to ask you for a motion to change auditors, and we'll explain why we would like to switch to Lone Culver for the next fiscal year. So I know you're sitting there listening, but you do have a role here, and there's really three things that you'll hopefully get from this presentation, and that is to know the principal sources of revenue for Curl BC, where these funds are used or spent, and to be aware of the financial statements and the auditor's report. And so we get on to the green book here, and the bottom line is that we had a surplus of 94,000. So another good year, but again, quite dependent on one-time government funding, both at the provincial and federal level, as we work our way out of the COVID crisis. So big thank you to both the provincial and federal governments for supporting sport and making sure that organizations are healthy as we come back into a better time. So the 94,000 is the surplus, but what we have on an ongoing basis are actually 4 funds now. And the balance of those 4 funds is 554,000. And it includes the general fund, which is close to 430,000. You can consider that unrestricted funds. Capital assets, which have been invested, close to 61,000. And the restricted fund is down to 4,000. And that we'll get to in a moment exactly what that is. But just wanted to mention that the board has restricted internally an additional 60,000 for what's to be known as the operating reserve fund. So what the heck are these funds we've just mentioned? Well, the general fund or unrestricted fund is to support core operations in all 3 pillars of the strategic plan. And we'll get into more detail of the strategic plan when we get to the annual report a little bit later in the presentation. The capital assets is the value of the funds that have remaining in assets that we have purchased over the past few years, net of amortization. So amortization is deducted off based on a declining balance. It varies a little bit for the different kinds of assets we have. The restricted fund represents usually government grants which haven't been expended during the year, but are restricted for a certain usage. And if we don't spend them, then we would conceivably have to return the funds, although that has never occurred. We're down to 4,000. The operating reserve fund is something we announced just before COVID or during the onset of COVID. And the plan was to establish this fund so that we could have a source of low-cost loans for member facilities in urgent need of support. So pleased to say that the board has now established 60,000 in that fund and planning to add to that fund as we move along. And there will be criteria published soon on how someone could or an organization could access that. You would need to be a member facility. So how we got here, if you think of the restricted fund as being the 3 of the funds there, the capital assets, the restricted fund, and the operating reserve, you'll see that it decreased over the previous 3 years, but we were able to add to it this year, including that operating reserve fund. So it's actually gone up. And at the same time, the unrestricted fund has gone up in all 4 of the last 4 years. So that's very positive. And that we're now total down below there of the 94,000 we started with. So the 3 kind of funds now we're bundling here, the under restricted, the operating reserve fund, and the previous restricted fund, 64,000. That together, the unrestricted 429. So nice to see that go up over the last 4 years. And the bottom line in this fund, we want to make sure we have at least 3 months of operating costs covered, and that would be anywhere from 350 to 400,000 a year. So 429, make sure that's covered. And we mentioned about the property and equipment earlier there. So where did the money come from this past year? This graph here shows 5 sources of money, and it's divided into the 3 pillars of the strategic plan. So the 5 types of funds of revenue: program revenue, sponsorship, championships, affiliation, and government. And of those 5, government is by far the largest this year, with over 50% of the funding, about 50%, over $900,000 from federal and provincial. So that's a record for us. You'll see the 3 pillars here are member services, long-term curler development, used to be known as long-term athlete development. We've customized that for curling, and external partnerships and internal capacity. And so under member services, you'll see that affiliation fees are up to 20% there of the total revenue, are the majority of the membership revenue, with programs comprising the rest. Long-term curler development, actually, again, government, very significant here, over 30% of the total revenue. That followed by championships revenue, sponsorships and programs, and partnerships and capacity comprised of government and sponsorship. So where were the funds spent? Almost 40% in member services, in part for staffing, but the majority on programs and services, and a small part for administration. Under long-term curler development, championships is the largest area, followed by staffing and programs and services. And we can see partnerships and capacity pretty evenly divided among administration, championships, and staffing. So that's to give you a pictorial representation of where the money's from and where it's spent, and that's on page 3 of the Green Book. Moving on to the auditor's statement, the auditor's report, with the financial statements. We'll see under assets, there's an increase in cash and prepaid expenses, so that's good. A decrease in receivables, not as good, but not too significant. And a decrease in property and equipment due to amortization and the fact we didn't purchase that much in the way of equipment this year. Under liabilities, all payables are current, and you'll see they've gone up because it includes $110,000 for clubs streaming equipment. This is from a special grant we received, one-time grant to support the all the clubs that are running tour events, the BC Curling Tour Champions. There are 11 clubs involved, so they we're enhancing the streaming at all those clubs as we speak. There's also the deferred lease inducement, which is to do with the 10-year lease we have in the office where Neil and I are both sitting at the moment. And we're in actually moving towards year 10 of that agreement, so we'll need to renew that next year. The fund balances are net assets or equity, and the income is added to the unrestricted fund, so that was that surplus, enhances that, less the operating reserve fund. It includes transfers for equipment purchases and amortization, and we mentioned the ORF. Here, if you don't like financial statements, don't always follow them, you will see that there are numbers and brackets beside a lot of the income statement, the balance statement, and so on. And that relates to these notes at the end of the auditor's report, and they provide a very good explanation on all these topics you see listed here. It would encourage you, if you're interested in any of these, just take a look at the note. The note number 1 on policies is probably the toughest one to get through, but I think the rest of them you'll find quite helpful. There's also, at the very end of the financial statements, 3 schedules, And this is additional information which shows you the diversity of the grant funding sources. So at the very beginning of the auditor's report, she makes a qualification that it's consistent with nonprofits that run operations that include events with revenues that cannot be verified. And what they're referring to there is the fact that we run a number of BC championships each year at clubs, and there's a club hosting budget in addition to the direct expenses we have. And we consider that an in and out in our statements, so it doesn't have an effect on them. But the auditor can't really verify that a host club spent 20 or generated 20. So it doesn't really have an effect, but is consistent with other nonprofits that are in that scenario. Page 4 of the financial report is a comparison of the year-end results to the budget, and just so you can see that we actually generated more revenue than we expected with all the grants that were available. And finally, looking at next year and onwards, you'll see the word continue there. So we're continuing to have a long-term focus with 3 to 4 years out, looking at things strategically. We measure outcomes, both financial and others, based on our strategic plan and operating plans. We provide regular updates to the board, so it's on a monthly basis. In addition to this annual report, we provide to the membership. And we need to respond to change, such as the impact of COVID. And we had to move pretty quickly a few times this year to either cancel events or put them back on again and make adjustments, which do impact the finances as we move along. And unfortunately led to the cancellation of some qualifying events, but we were able to hold almost all BC championships other than the BC wheelchair champs. And finally, to continue to diversify revenue sources, we generated a lot more through philanthropic endeavors this year, and as well as with 50-50 gaming endeavors. So and also encouraging our clubs to have their own BC Amateur Sport Fund projects to raise money. So Neil, that's the financial report, but as I mentioned near the beginning, there is a need to switch auditors. And the reason is that our current auditor, Baker Tilly, done a great job for the past 6 years, but they let us know in February that they would no longer be able to offer a nonprofit rate because of their just costs had gone up for them, and they were having trouble staying competitive. And essentially it meant a doubling of our fee. So we went out, did a search with some advice from some former CPAs in the field, and they recommended Lone Calder as a group to go to. And indeed, Lone Calder has agreed to offer us the same rate as we've had before over the past number of years, and it's going to cut our fees in half for the next year. And having explained that, Neil, I'll hand it back to you.
Thanks, Scott. Going back to the financial reports, is there any questions on the financial reports?
We do have some questions. I have one from Gord Smith regarding the budget. Does the board know in advance if their applications for government funding has been approved? Are the grants tied to specific programs? What programs could be affected by grants that are not approved? And does the board have a long-term plan to become less dependent on government funding?
You want me to take that, Neil?
Sure, Scott.
Okay. We try to be conservative in our approach, and there's a lot of intelligence gathering before the fiscal year begins to get a sense of, and indeed a commitment where possible on grants being maintained. For example, our core grant, which includes all three areas of the strategic plan. We knew back in February that it would be status quo, and that represents about $261,000. What we didn't know was what would happen with gaming, and we have standardly got a $110,000 gaming grant. So what we do, we apply as early as possible. So we get our application in March, and we in fact now know that we got a $25,000 increase in that grant. So we're quite pleased by that. And I would say, if anything, that not only is government maintaining our grants, but they're trying to find other ways to provide us with additional funds. I was part of an advocacy group led by Sport BC last year and this year, advocating for additional investment on an ongoing basis for the sports system. And the ask was for an additional 12 million over the next 3 years. The government received that request very positively. They are looking at ways of doing it. And I would say we're over the next 3 years anyway, looking quite good here. There's still possibility of additional one-time funding as we move along here. But then to get to the next part of your question, yes, we are looking at and continue to try and encourage additional philanthropic endeavors. We know that curlers, people in general, like to give where they're playing, and that the top priority is to help our clubs with generating additional funds. But we do also have the Curling for Life Endowment Fund, which has had about 60,000 donated to it, and we get a contribution from that each year. It actually resides at Vancouver Foundation, and they send us an amount each year, about 5% of that fund on an ongoing basis. So we're looking to build that up. And sponsorship, of course, as well. A difficult time for sponsorship because of obviously companies in recovery mode, but really pleased to say that our longtime larger sponsors have all stuck with us, and in fact, gave us some funding when they didn't have to. So they're really good partnerships. Some of those partnerships over 20 years in length, and tremendous supporters of curling. Lindsay, did I catch everything there, or was there something else?
I believe you caught everything. If there's anything more, Gord, please ask a follow-up question. I do have another question here from Penny Shantz. There is such a huge discrepancy in the variances, both in revenues and expenses. Can you go into more detail on the member services categories?
Let me just open the book here, but let me first of all, I saw your picture twice, Penny, in that opening awards thing, so congratulations and well done. And Neil, did you notice that, I think, as well?
Yeah, I did. Yes.
So well done, and thanks for all you've done for curling. Now, Penny, are you looking at the income statement? Can you find out, Lindsay? Or is she...
Penny, do you mind adding something into the Q&A as a follow-up?
Just give me an example of one.
Oh, statement of operations with budget for comparison.
Just wondering if we're where she is. Oh yeah, I've got it. And a particular category here. Well, I'll just start at the top here. And for others, we're on page 4 of the Green Book, and looking at a variance, for example, provincial government grants. So positive variance of 62,000. As we've mentioned, the lots of one-time funding coming to us. And so between The other provincial funding and provincial government grants, yes, huge variance, very positive, and that's that additional government support. And you'd see the same at the federal level. Affiliation dues, negative variance because of 23,000, and we had 8 clubs that couldn't open, and so that didn't help. But I will say, well done to all the clubs who were able to, on average, have 85% of their curlers return. We are curling scoring above most sports on a return to play. There are a lot of sports that are saying, well, just a 50% or 60% return to play, and hearing that from some other provinces. So 85% return, but of course it meant we didn't quite make budget. We'd tried to be conservative on that prediction. BC Championships, we did not run a lot of our qualifying events and went straight to open events, which meant, and indeed in some cases, people withdrew from the events because they were concerned about COVID. So our numbers were down substantially, about half or less than half, even number of competitors we normally would have. We're not too concerned about that. We think this number will come back up next season when we have a, knock on wood, a regular season. But it remains to be seen. Obviously, a little bit of concern there to have half the competitors we would normally. Fundraising, very positive variance there. That's thanks to 7 clubs, including Parksville, which contributed funds. And what these funds were the curlers agreed to donate their unused membership fees. And this is back to the previous fiscal year, but not processed until April onwards. So this last fiscal year, their dues, their unused dues, because they only were able to play for maybe 40%, 50% of the 2021 season. And you'll see the 7 clubs were able to generate, I believe it was close to 100,000. The other part there is the big 50-50 we ran with Raffle Box and the Prince George Golf and Curling Club during the Women's Worlds. It generated 133,000 in revenue. Big shout out to Terry Palinchuk, our past chair, and Kate McCulloch up in Prince George and their whole team who did a wonderful job there. So, Lindsay, that's the revenue side. I don't know whether on the expense side you wanted to go through the same thing, but that would give, I think, people an idea. There are offsetting expenses against all those revenues.
I will let you know if there's any follow-up questions. Oh,
okay.
Sorry. Yep, there is. Colin Chan, the largest single category for expenditures in general and in particular, Pillar 2 long-term curler development is for competitions. Very little was spent on programs and services. Is this emphasis the best way to invest in the growth of our sport, particularly participation at the grassroots level?
Scott, want to handle that one?
Well, want to is a question.
Or we handle that one?
Thanks, Colin, and thanks for joining us tonight. I'm not sure whether the graph gives a full depiction here, but you should keep in mind the competitions, half of them are Sport for Life events, and so that would include Masters and Club Challenge or Club Championships, as we call it now, seniors, stick, wheelchairs. So there are a lot of Sport for Life events in there, along with of course, the youth events. So that's part of what the expenditure is under championships. In terms of programs and services, very difficult this past 2 years really to run a lot of in-person programming. So I think you'd see that number is down from where we wanted it to be and where we could do it. And just a lot of what we did was online. but that actually was a good transition. We were able to get more people involved, but at very low cost. So it's I wouldn't probably, once we get to next year and the staff hearing that response or that comment, we'll look at where else we're spending this. But certainly the plan is in a normal year to spend more in that area of programs and services. I hope that helps, Colin, and happy to talk to you further about that offline.
I do have another question from Sean Garvey. Given that Curl BC has a number of long-term sponsors, as you mentioned, at the provincial level, is there a mechanism to reach out to these same sponsors at a local level, or a means of recognizing them by member clubs as a value add?
Yeah, one of our priorities we established a few years ago was to try and make sure there was a club or individual benefit in these sponsorships. So it wasn't strictly a corporate sponsorship. And we would use the example of our biggest sponsor, Bel Air Direct Insurance. If you were to, as an individual, participate there, you would save a significant amount of money on your house insurance. So it used to be house and car, but they're no longer doing auto insurance. So that more of an independent or individual benefit there. But then they also were doing $500 sponsorships with a few of the clubs, particularly the ones doing BC Curling Tour events, if they would host a day and feature Bel Air Direct and promote the program. And so it's one of those situations where we can all help each other. There would be more money overall for curling if we promote that type of program, and more for the clubs, more savings for the curlers, and additional funding for Curl BC to spend on programming. I could go into other examples, but I think that just generally the answer there is yes, we would like to make sure curlers, the member facilities, and Curl BC all benefit in these sponsorships.
I have two people have asked the same question. If you could explain the member services expenditures variance of $302,906. If you could give some more details on this.
Yes, we had quite a discussion with the auditor about where things would be placed, and where they landed was, and this is now to do with the $110,000 for enhancing member facilities streaming, with all of that fundraising and that we talked about, which included the BC Amateur Sport Fund and the 50-50 raffle. And when you add those all together, it's I think it's in the neighborhood of $337,000. So that is the big difference there. It's and it's all good, right? It's just a matter of where do you put it. And the auditor had initially had and maybe it was me that pushed them there, the $110,000 for the clubs under TV, and we thought, no, it shouldn't be there. It actually is something that's benefiting the clubs directly. So that's what it's comprised of.
I also have a question regarding the 50-50 at the World of the $130,000. Was that the full total, or was that 50% of the total?
That was 133.5 was the full total. And so the net surplus to or net contribution to Prince George was about 50,000, because we had some costs involved to use raffle box, and so they ended up with 85% of the surplus, and hopefully that was what they were hoping for. We had started off planning to raise 100, or I guess gross 100,000 in sales. So 133 was definitely a bonus.
That is all the questions at this time.
Thanks
Thanks,
for
Lindsay.
thanks for asking.
Yeah, thanks everyone for asking the questions. It's difficult sometimes. I appreciate everyone asking the questions, taking the time to do that. And Scott, I appreciate you giving a full response to them. As Scott mentioned, this session is recorded and the staff will be reviewing the questions. And certainly, as Scott said, you can actually always contact them if you have further questions or clarifications. So again, thanks for the questions. The next item is the appointment of auditor, and Scott's already explained the background of this. So really what we have to do to change auditors is have a motion to do that. And the motion appointment of Juan Calder LLP as auditors for Curl BC for the 2022-23 fiscal year. I have in my notes, it doesn't say on your slide, but my notes inform me that it was moved by Golden Years Winter Club, Terry Hawley, and seconded by Armstrong Curling Club, Daryl Sears. And I open the floor to any discussion on that motion.
Nothing has come through.
Seeing none, I now call for the vote on the motion. As before, please use the chat box only if you are opposed to the motion.
Nothing has come through.
Thank you, Lindsay. Accordingly, the motion to change the auditor from Baker Lilly to Juan Calder LLP has been approved. The next three items on the agenda are elections. As I mentioned in my introduction, we are in a transition year from 2-year terms to 3-year terms. So all 9 board positions will be affected. We're going to start with the 3-year terms, and we have 3 candidates for these 3 positions as follows. Michael Dudar of the Duncan Curling Club, he would be new to the board. Brenda McClellan of the Salmon Arm Curling Club, and she's already served the 1-year term on the board. And Brenda Sims of the House Sound Curling Club, who would be new to the board. Upon a successful motion to approve, all 3 candidates shall be considered elected by acclamation. The motion to elect Michael Dudar, Brenda McClellan, and Brenda Sims to 3-year terms by acclamation was moved by Golden Ears Winter Club, Terry Hawley, and seconded by Armstrong Curling Club, Daryl Sears. And I now call for the vote. Remind to use the chat box only if you are opposed.
Nothing has come through, Neil.
Thank you. Accordingly, I declare Michael, Brenda, and Brenda elected by acclamation, and I'd like to thank them for agreeing to serve on the board. The next item is election of 3 governors at large for 1-year terms. And since I'm directly involved in this election, I'm going to ask Scott to please conduct this part of the proceedings.
Thanks very much, Neil, and it is my opportunity to thank you, Neil, for chairing this past year. Not easy year, but also thanks to the whole board. So we have 10 people who have been on the board, and most of them continuing. And we're very lucky to have such a great group. So thanks very much. The reason I'm doing this part is, of course, because Neil himself is running to continue for another year. So we have 3 candidates for these 3 positions as follows. Neil Campbell of the Victoria Curling Club, who has served 3 years on the board, the last one as chair. Sean Everest of the Kelowna Curling Club has served 2 years on the board. Keith Switzer of the Vancouver Curling Club, Royal City Curling Club, and Richmond Curling Club has served 4 years on the board, the last 2 as vice chair. Upon a successful motion to approve, all 3 candidates shall be considered elected by acclamation. The motion to elect Neil Campbell, Sean Everest, and Keith Switzer to 1-year terms by acclamation was moved by Golden Ears Winter Club, Terry Hawley, and seconded by Armstrong Curling Club's Daryl Sears, and I now call for the vote. Please use the chat box only if you are opposed.
Nothing has come through, Scott.
Thanks, Lindsay. That allows me to declare Neil, Sean, and Keith elected by acclamation, and I would like to thank them again for all they have done for curling over the past few years and for agreeing to serve on the board again and deal with me. Neil, back to you.
Thanks, Scott. The next item on the board is the extension of 3 governors at large by 1 year to 2-year terms. We have 3 governors at large who were elected to 2-year terms at the 2021 AGM. Andrew Benson of the Cranbrook Curling Club, Morgan Lipka of the Kimberley Curling Club and Cranbrook Curling Club, and Terry Phelps of the Prince George Golf and Curling Club. On a successful motion to approve, all 3 of these board members will have their terms extended by 1 year to a total of 2. This will be a total of 2 years combined. So they will serve 1 more year. The motion to extend by 1 year in terms of Andrew Benson, Morgan Lipka, and Terry Phelps was moved by Golden Ears Winter Club, Terry Hawley, and seconded by Armstrong Curling Club, Daryl Sears. And I now call for the vote. A reminder, only use the chat box, only if you are opposed.
Nothing is coming through, Neil.
Thank you, Lindsay. Accordingly, I declare the motion carried. I'd like to thank Andrew, Morgan, and Terry for all they have done for curling over the past year and for agreeing to extend their term on the board. The next item is the operational report, and I please call upon Scott again to present the operational report to the members.
Thanks again, Neil, and congratulations to all the board members for either having been elected or extending your terms. I'm going to switch now from the green book to the blue book that you received, and that's the cover page there. And I think the most important thing for me to do here is to thank the staff. What an incredible group of people to work with. You're very lucky, I'm very lucky, and they're very dedicated, very sharp, they work really well together. And so curling's in good shape in BC because of this wonderful group helping all those volunteers out there. And let's just look at the highlights. Now, if you know me, I like to talk about 3 things about 3 things. And the 3 things here we're going to get into are the 3 pillars that you heard about earlier, and they're the 3 pillars of the strategic plan. And each of those 3 pillars has end statements or goals. And these are goals that are agreed upon by the board. So they're set by the board, and the staff's job is to develop an operational plan to make progress towards what becomes 9 end statements, 3 by 3. So let's look at the first pillar, which is enhancing member services and engagement. And the 3 ends statements under there are governance and risk management, education, and communications. So the first end, governance and risk management, we implemented 8 safe sport policies at the Curl BC level, with another one to come. And this is a very hot topic right now, as you're probably aware, and we're nowhere near done here. We've got these policies now at the national level and the provincial level, but the job ahead of us, which Kim Dennis is leading for us, is to implement safe sport policies at all the member facilities so that we have when you talk about curling, it's a safe environment for all involved. And if something happens, there's a process to deal with it if there's any concern or complaint. We held 5 coffee chat and zone meetings, a great attendance, really good to get to know people around the province. And for me, I really liked seeing the exchange among managers and presidents from different areas of the province exchanging ideas. And we were able to sit back and just hear some good ideas there. Oh, the cow. And finally, I almost went by Jack Bowman there. I'd be in big trouble. We have this wonderful person, Jack Bowman. If you don't know him, I always say Jack Bow at telus.net, and he just loves helping clubs with their gaming grant applications and anything else they want to do to try and access grants. And he helped another 12 clubs this year, put in close to 200 hours, and really recommend that you utilize Jack's services. CurlBC pays for that, and he loves doing it. So hopefully that is a big help to a number of you. Going to move over to education now, and Paul Cheka is now our lead in this area and doing a great job in his first few months on the job. And big thanks to Kim Dennis, who was leading this up before Paul came on board. We now have 43 individuals who are level 1 trained and 13 at the level 2 level. As I mentioned during the finance presentation, well, the start had to be done online, and couldn't do it all in person while COVID was around. 32 people now trained in the community coach pathway, or additional people. And so all those numbers that's what are we at there, probably close to 100. That's important for us, obviously, to have good coaches on the ground around the province. And we offered a number of business of curling modules, again online, and they averaged over 40 people in attendance for each of the 10 sessions. We collaborated with Curling Alberta on that, and we're doing so again this year. It appears to be a winning strategy to provide professional development at low or no cost for our clubs. And communications. Big thank you to Doug Sarty here, who he's just about finished his first year with CurlBC, done a fantastic job for us. And you'll see here a lot of stats on social media. So over 43,000 visits on Twitter, a reach of over 160,000 on Facebook, almost 340 Instagram posts, and over what we like to see, almost 15,000 likes. I really like this next figure, over 106,000 unique visitors to the CurlBC website. That's a record. I can tell you that's grown, not quite double, but I remember it being 60,000 5 or 6 years ago. 106,000, that really turns marketers, sponsors' heads when they see that many people are engaged with curling. That's over 5 times our membership. So lots of people interested in curling. And with regard to TV and streaming, oh dear. Are you seeing anything?
It looks like your remote desktop has gone down.
Oh, okay. All right, let's try that again. All right, I think I know what happened, but let me just see if I can. I'm just going to have to buzz out of here for a second, Neil. Sorry.
No problem.
Interesting.
Sorry, I think it launches all out, and we should be able to get back in now, Scott.
And Are you seeing anything yet, Lindsay?
No.
Okay, I need to share my screen then.
Yes, please.
And we're back, I hope. Just a sec. Share. How's that?
Perfect.
Great. And that would, of course, happen right in the middle of the communications presentation, nothing to do with Doug Sarty. So sorry, Doug, just wanted to get to the facts. And first of all, big thank you to Kamloops Curling Club for, and MacArthur Island, the community, Kamloops curling community, for carrying on with the men's and the women's during a difficult time of COVID. We're fortunate to have a partnership with Czech TV in Victoria, which goes across the province and indeed across the country, that saw almost 90,000 people watching the final games of those championships. That we actually televised 4 games, and the total viewership was about 140,000 viewers per minute, and that is in addition to streaming that was done not only for the final weekend, but during the week. And we had about 170 to 180,000 views on streaming. And so all big numbers for us, and a big success given the situation. Okay, we're on the second pillar. 3 end statements are to do with participation, competitions, and high performance. Colin's question earlier about growing participation, here's what we were able to do. We were able to bring in a new program in collaboration with Quebec Curling Federation, who has developed an excellent program through the Passion Curling, which is run by a former staff member of Quebec Curling, and they part of it is this under 12 Blizzard program, which a number of clubs, 10 in fact, have taken on and are using to promote under 12 curling. We also had the BC Skills Award program redone, and big thank you to Daryl and Kate Horn for doing such a great job. And the crest tripled over the past season. I hear the new purple badge was a big reason for that. So well done to the staff and Daryl and Kate for putting that together. And finally, we conducted 5 webinars on a number of topics with 42 participants to enhance participation. Competitions. Our desire is to run professionally run competitions in this area. It was very difficult to do that this year with all the canceling and rescheduling, and by the end of March, we, I think burnout was probably a word that you might use about a few of us. And so big thank you though to everybody, not just the staff, but of course all the host committees, the officials, the coaches, the athletes, everybody who made an effort to get us back to a more normal season. And as mentioned, we were able to run most BC championships, but not the qualifying events. The BC Games, Winter Games, was canceled. So obviously the zone qualifiers for that event were postponed. So I shouldn't use the word canceled. So they'll actually be on in January of this coming year. And so we'll see that back in Vernon, I believe in March of 2023, and then a BC Games again, BC Winter Games in 2024. It has been the solution. We have, by running open championships, provided more competitors with a BC championship experience. We've been holding meetings and conducting surveys to find out what everybody thought of that. But I think generally there was positive feedback on this idea of running larger BC championships and getting everybody involved instead of small little qualifying events. And we mentioned the TV broadcast and streaming of the men's and women's, but we also did streaming for all these other events listed here. So greatly expanded by the fact staff had the idea of going out and purchasing 7 iPads and having those there in addition to any professionally produced streaming we had done. And a big thank you to Melissa Sligo and John Cullen for doing a great job with commentary for a lot of these, especially the men's and the women's, just a great combo. High performance, and speaking of Melissa, and she and Will Sutton and Lindsay Shannon put together a great program again this year. They're great believers in Kaizen, which means constant improvement, and they're always looking to improve this program and make it better for the athletes and coaches. You'll see that there were 4 U35 teams, 7 U25, 7 U18, and 4 high performance and development teams. So a lot of teams involved. Melissa was directly involved with all of them. So big job for her as our high performance director. In all, 12 of these teams went to Canadian championships. So that's a success. We'd like to get more medals, but that's next. And we facilitated over 30 webinars for program athletes, plus, and the CSI stands for Canadian Sport Institute, not that crime series that you may have seen. So, and they also had special speaker series there. And now the third pillar with its 3 end statements. The revenue generation and governance is the first end, or N7, I guess we call it. Community investment, end 8, and community acknowledgement, which we often refer to as recognition and awards, is N9. And so, as you heard in the financial statements, a big year with the provincial and federal government providing a lot of support, 900,000 altogether. We mentioned the 133 from the 50-50 and the net surplus to Prince George. So I think we've covered N7 already, Neil. On to end 8. This is a tough one, this endeavor to get municipalities and communities investing in new facilities or enhancing their current facilities. I'm pleased to say there's been a lot of success in Richmond in doing this. I consider them kind of a model community for the investment they've made in the Richmond Curling Club, and just really looking forward to that club reopening in September, having been refurbished and enhancement of the roof and plant. So would welcome you to speak with Nick Sue directly. He's been really good. He's their president and really good at relationship building out in Richmond. We are still promoting the development of regional curling hubs and have spoken many times with Coquitlam, Burnaby, a few times with Langford over in Greater Victoria, and continue to promote that idea. We're at North Vancouver, North Shore, if you will, is another area we may want to consider, because we don't want to see larger municipalities with no curling clubs, which is the case in those right now. Curl BC also plays a key role in a number of multi-sport and national groups, including Sport BC and Via Sport. We work very closely with both of them. The Sport BC's advocacy committee, as we mentioned earlier, and we generally try to collaborate wherever we can with other PSOs, that's provincial sport organizations, or MSOs, multi-sport organizations, and work together because we know we're stronger as part of a larger group. And this would be true as well when we look at the national picture, working with the Curling Canada staff and the other member associations, MAs as they're called, are EDs across the country. That's all these initialisms, executive directors of the various provinces and territories. We had several meetings with all these groups this past week, and a number of meetings, at least monthly, if not bi-weekly, with these groups. And one that's been so important over the past 2 years has been the Via Sports Return to Sport group, and just some of it commiserating, some of it collaborating with other sports to see how do we get sport back. And it's been a big help. And I don't think any of us could have done it on our own, and just would kind of congratulate the BC sports system for welcoming us and collaborating with us, and looking forward to more of that. And finally, I don't think I could say anything here that was better than that opening introduction, and big thank you to Kim Dennis and Doug Sardi for pulling that together. And Kim, that was if that was your first time doing that, that was really good. And I think just a really nice way to start off an AGM. We'll have to do that again. And so we're thrilled to be able to celebrate those great performances by all the players, coaches, officials, and volunteers with annual awards. And also special mention of the Gordon Huey Memorial Scholarship. And this was awarded an award of $1,000 to UBC student Chelsea Taylor of Vancouver. So congratulations to her. And a big thank you to all of you. You're obviously dedicated to come out on a almost summer night and listen to Neil and I here, and Brian. But Neil, I guess if there's any questions, happy to answer.
Thanks, Scott. Are there any questions?
I do have a question. Dale Cameron is asking, are the clubs in the cities you are discussing the future of curling with involved in those discussions?
Well, there actually aren't any clubs in the communities that have been talking to, although the efforts that we've been making in Coquitlam have been, I've been working very closely with their I'm going to say past president, but I think she's the current president of Port Moody, and so making sure that we are hand in hand with them and their desire to have a club. Burnaby has no club. North Shore Curling Association, we try and stay in close contact with them and support them. Very unfortunately, they were part of the new Harry Jerome Rec Center, and the new mayor reversed a vote and took them out. So that sort of stuff is happening, and we're trying to help where we can and promote. Langford, again, is a community or close by was the Wanafuka Rec Center, curling club at the rec center there, and it's no longer, it's had its space taken away. And so that's kind of the groups we're talking with, are the ones where curling centers have been taken away, and we're trying to get them reestablished.
Dale was just clarifying that Vancouver was listed as a city where discussions are continuing, but I think perhaps you meant North Vancouver.
Yeah, probably meant North Vancouver, yeah.
I have one person asking for Jack Bowman's email address, which I will send to them via email.
jackbo@telus.net.
Oh, there you go. You know it. But I will email that out. I don't see any other questions at this time.
All right.
Thanks,
Thank
Lindsay. Thanks, Scott. Again, a reminder that that Scott and the staff are always open for questions if you have any comments or want some more clarification. I will say that you can't see me on the screen that well. I'm actually wearing a Curl BC vest, and we're out and about in events. The staff is and the board of governors. And if you do see us at an event, just come up. If you have things to ask us about, or even just to say hello, please do so. You're all members, and well, your input is always welcome. It's good to meet members as well. So the next item I have to do on the agenda is recognition of retiring board members. Number 14. Both Dale Gray and Terry Hawes have completed their terms as governor, and they're very proud of their contributions they've made to Curl BC. The passion will be missed on the board. We all know it will continue in the future endeavors and in the love of curling. On behalf of the Curl BC family, we would like to thank you for your time and dedication to our sport. I also have the privilege of thanking Terry Palanchuk for amazing contributions to Curl BC over the past 7 years, including as chair and past chair over the past 2 years. Terry, I think it's fair to say that we could not have gone through COVID without you. Thanks so much for all your personal support and your willingness to help with anything and everything involving the organization, including the amazing successful 50-50 project in Prince George. We look forward to working with you in whatever role you take on next on behalf of curling. Number 50 agenda is the concluding remarks and adjournment. And just before I make these concluding remarks, I know Scott has staffed thank the staff, and all the reports and stuff is a result of a lot of hard work by Scott and the Curl BC staff. But I particularly want to thank Lindsay Shannon she's really orchestrated and done all the technical logistics for this meeting. And she's done it with very calm confidence, as you can figure out just from listening. There's always glitches in technology, but Lindsay, you made a big difference in keeping things moving along and handling it very well. Thank you very much for that. Following the annual general meeting, immediately after this, the new board will meet to elect the executive, chair, and 2 vice chairs, and the members will be informed shortly after the meeting is completed who those people are. Assuming there's no further business, a motion to adjourn has been moved by Gold Deers Winter Club, Terry Hawley, and seconded by Armstrong Curling Club, Daryl Sears. And I'll call a vote to adjourn. Again, only if you're opposed.
There is no opposition.
Thank you, Lindsay. Accordingly, I declare the motion approved and the meeting adjourned. On behalf of the board and the staff of Curl BC, please stay safe and have a great summer. We'll see you back at the rink in the fall. Thank you very much.